we are headed to Barnes. I'm with the twin sis. She's driving us because I didn't want to drive, and we had other errands to run today. But if you watched my previous video, you know what this means. So stay tuned and you'll figure out which book I picked.
In a corner with her books, glitzy reads, and she's hooked. Fantasy and love collide, takes a journey deep inside. Pages turn, the world is vast, magic spells and charms are cast. Love adventures fill the air, lost in stories everywhere. So
I'm about 50 pages into Legendary, and I just want to note two things before I get further into this book. One, it's in a different character's point of view, which is a little bit of a letdown, but we're gonna put that aside because we've already gotten enough into the book, 5 chapters in, to get past that. The other thing is it picks up right where our previous book, Caraval, left off. So that is very nice. Also, just like a really nice note is that it does have a lot of the same, let's see if I can get to it, page breaks, just like Caraval did. So that's a plus. Okay, so an almost ending update. Clearly it is snowed over here where I live. It's starting to melt. And we are about 9 chapters until we finish finale. I'm on chapter 50 out of 59 chapters. Of course, there's a true ending after that, but we're not there yet. And the beginning of this book was so slow. Like, it took me 4 months to really get into the mood of reading this book and like going through Christmas reads and fall reads before I could really like settle. And yes, my Christmas decorations are still up. I need to take those down this weekend, but we are getting super duper close to finishing, and so I'll finally be able to do my wrap up of the series, which has been a long time coming. But finishing the book today is definitely my goal. So I'm not supposed to feel this way, but I am giddy at like what is happening right now, and it is wrong. Like, it is not at all what I'm supposed to be giddy about based on what's going on in the events of this book. But I just needed to pop on and just say, like, Stephanie Garber, why did you do this to me? I promise I'm enjoying this book. I know it's taken me like years to finish it, but I stayed up till 2 a.m. last night, getting from like 45% of the way through to 75% of the way through, and now I'm like trucking through this book, and I'm enjoying the parts I'm not supposed to enjoy. It's just too good. Okay, I'm gonna finish now. Last chapter. Guys, I did it. I finally finished finale. I'm done with both books. and I can finally wrap up part 2 of our book battle. Now, we still have part 3 coming because I have to read the other 2 books in the Inheritance Game series. But let's go ahead and talk about Caraval. So, I think the reason that I went for this series over the Inheritance Game series is because a couple reasons. One, I am just like a really big fantasy romance fan, and that is essentially what you get out of these books. I think I read Legendary back in August, or like was reading it like August to September, and it took me a little bit to get through it. I'm just a really slow reader. Like, that's what I'm gonna blame it on. I'm a slow reader. And I'm also in grad school, and I'm also teaching full time. So like, I'm not doing this full time, but I'm a slow reader. And so like, if I get through a chapter a night, you know, that's my reading pace. I pretty much enjoyed Legendary for the most part. I gave the book 4 stars, and I think majority of that was I kind of was thrown off a little bit at first when I picked up Legendary, because I guess I was expecting to still be in Scarlett's point of view, but the series switches to Tella's point of view. And anytime the series point of view switches and I'm not prepared for it mentally, like I did not know to expect that with this book, I kind of have to take a step back, because it's almost like you're starting over. Like you're revisiting this world. Like, yes, there's some background, but you're kind of having to reinvest in a new storyline with Legendary that's completely separated from Caraval. And they hint at it at the end of Caraval, but I just don't think I was entirely prepared for it. Now, Legendary follows, I would say, a very similar premise as Caraval. We're going through the Caraval nights again, and if you go through the book, like, there's still the interludes of, you know, night 2 of Caraval, so it's still happening, but this time it's from Tella's point of view. And the biggest thing I remember from this book, because it has been a couple months since I read it, was you're kind of introduced to 2 of Tella's main love interests. One is Legend, who is the like creator of Caraval, and then the other is Jax. But they don't introduce Legend as Legend. It's basically like nobody really knows who Legend is. And so I think Tella falls in love with like the character that he is playing until she realizes it's Legend. And then once you get to finale, you realize like she's in love with Legend. Like, that's who she's in love with. I don't really feel like that spoils anything. So if you're mad at me for saying that, I'm sorry, but I don't really feel like it spoils anything in the book. And then Jax is one of the fates. So in Legendary, you get introduced to this deck of destiny that Scarlett and Tella's mother has stolen and hidden away, because all of these magical fates are trapped in these cards. And Legendary's basis is on how can they free the fates, because we are against Legend, and Legend has too much power, and they are against Legend, and they want to do everything they can to stop him from killing all the other fates and like gaining too much power. But one of the fates that's in here isn't trapped in the cards, and that's the Prince of Hearts, Jax. And if I'm misremembering any of this, just call me out, because it's been 4 months since I've read this. But the storyline is just how can they get the fates out of the deck, and then like whether or not they actually are able to do that. And so it was very consistent in one point of view, which I'm going to highlight because in our next book, that's not what we get. But the storyline is like very seamless, and what I just mean, like, it doesn't really skip through time very much. And so it's pretty easy once I got reinvested into Tella's story to read this and like thoroughly enjoy it. But then part of the reason I think I got out of the mood to finish this series was because as soon as I picked up finale, you're reading Tella and Scarlett's point of view. And that really threw me for a loop, because it's almost every other chapter. Scarlett, Tella, Donatella, Scarlet. And it just keeps flip-flopping. And I was so frustrated with this because not only was it flip-flopping, but it was also skipping time a little bit. And so where you left off of Scarlet's story, it's now 2 days after that. And so it was just really hard for me to get reinvested because now I'm having to reinvest in Scarlet's story. I'm trying to keep being invested in Tella's story, but both of their timelines are so different. And on top of that, you have two different love triangles going on. You have Scarlet with Julian and Nicholas. And Nicholas was introduced in the first story of Caraval, where it's the boy that her dad wants to marry her off to, and they've been writing letters. Julian, also introduced in Caraval, we already know she and him have had like a little love fling, and it's her going between like, should I be in love with Julian or should I not? Because in Legendary, they have a little bit of a stifle where you find out Julian and Legend are brothers, and so it kind of scares Scarlet. Scarlet's like, well, wait a minute, Legend's bad. I shouldn't love his brother because he got this information from me. And so then she's like, well, maybe Nicholas. And it just goes on and on and on and on and on and on until finally one of them dies. I'm not going to tell you which. Read it to find out if you haven't. And if you have, you already know. Then we go right back to Tella. And Tella's love interest is between Legend. And that's why I don't really feel like it's a spoiler. Because once you get to finale, like, it's just Legend. It's not this other character anymore. But Legend and Jax, who was also a part of the other book. And I think the whole time in this book, it's flip-flop. It's like, do you trust Legend? Do you trust Jax? Do you like her with Legend? Do you like her with Jax? And that's why for a moment, when I was like very giddy at the end of reading this book, I was like, oh, she's gonna make that choice. Or, oh, this is about to like really throw things for a loop. And then Stephanie Garber just wraps it up in a nice little tidy bow, and, your heart is satisfied. But for a second there, I was like, it's not going to end up this way. No way. So overall, I gave Finale a 4.5. I really thoroughly enjoyed this book. It just took me so long to get through it. One, because I am a mood reader. I like to read books when I'm in the mood to read books. So I do put books down and pick up other books and read those, and then I'll eventually come back to the one that I'm ready to read. But it took me a long time to pick this one back up because I wanted to get through fall and Christmas and do some of those holiday reads, and then in January I was ready to pick this back up. And let me tell you, once I got halfway through this book, or right before halfway through this book, I flew through it in 2 days. It just took me to that point. Like, I needed to get to that, in that mindset of, I need to just sit down and read this book, and I'm interested enough and I want to read it. And it finally happened. And I'm so relieved, honestly. Like, I feel like a weight has like risen from my shoulders now that I'm done reading it. Because yes, it was like a checklist item. I wanted to get this video out, but I'm so happy to have known like how it ends because I felt like for a while there it was just going to go on and on and on and on forever. And yes, I do like there to be conflict, and I do like there to be sometimes, is it going to be him? Is it going to be him? But there was just too much of it in here. Like, it was just, I wish almost like this was two different stories. I wish there was a Scarlet's version and a Tella's version. I understand why they were intermingled, and it helped the story flow towards the end. But that beginning, man, that is why this did not get 5 stars. Because I was really, really, really trying to get through the beginning of this book. And I just kept putting it down and picking it up and going, what did I just read about? 2 months later, what did I read about before this? So it was a feat. It was getting through this, and it is a big series. I mean, I don't have Caraval with me right now, but like, they're 400-page books. It's a big series. Overall, it was a really good read. I really thoroughly enjoyed it. I don't know at this point if I'm gonna enjoy the Inheritance games more or less, because at this point it's been 4 months since I read the first one. So am I gonna remember the characters? am I going to be able to pick up where I left off? So maybe I'm doing it a little bit of a disservice by reading it 4 months after I read the first book. But ultimately, I mean, I read this 4 months after I read Caraval, so I think it'll be okay. We are going to wrap this book battle up in our part 3, where I will address my feelings towards the inheritance games, and then I will bring Caraval back and we will just talk about what I liked about both series and which one ultimately I felt like was more of an Erica book, a glitzy book. So what I preferred to read and what I remember most, because sometimes, you know, I read a book and I don't remember anything that happened in it. And I might even have there's one book I rated 5 stars. It was a Colleen Hoover book. Oh no, I'm so sorry. If you don't like Colleen Hoover, I'm sorry. But there was one book that from her that I rated 5 stars, and I remember nothing of that book at this point. None of it. I could reread that entire book and probably not have a single revelation of like, oh yeah, I've read this before, because I remember nothing. That's why when I do these videos, I have to kind of talk through what's happening as I'm going through it, because like I said, I read this one 4 months ago. I don't remember as much about it, but I feel like I remember enough about it to why I rated it 4 stars. It was just and I usually tend to rate like first books in a series higher, because it's what like really hooked me in the first place. Sometimes it's hard to like follow up with a good series, like follow up a series with another good book, because your expectations are already so high when it's hooked you originally. But Finale did a really good job of wrapping up this series once I got through the mud of the, you know, first half of this book, which it was necessary. The whole part of series is it's got to be world building. Like sometimes you got to get through the mud, right? You got to get through the gray area and the unfun part to really thoroughly enjoy the ending. And I felt like that kind of was what happened for me, because I gave Caraval a 4.25. Legendary was down to a 4. And then Finale wrapped it up with a 4.5. So ultimately we had a little bit of a slope, but we ended on a high note, and that is always a plus. But unfortunately, none of these books got 5 stars for me. It took me way too long to get through them, and I have been looking forward to starting a buddy read of Throne of Glass with my sister-in-law and some of her friends. So I think like because that's been on my mind, I just haven't done a good job of like really, I mean, yes, I wanted to finish this before I started Throne of Glass, but now it's going to take me even longer to get to part 3, right? Because I have so many other plans to do. But anyway, good book, good series. I was really happy I picked this one up. I mean, I feel like in the fall when it's fantasy, like it's kind of a good time to read it. But once Christmas hit, man, and Christmas for me hits in like November. So it took me a while to pick this back up. And I've been very busy. But, you know, school's about to start back up, and I'm gonna try to keep reading and making videos. But, you know, if I go on a little hiatus, it's all just because I have no time. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked the video, please like it. If you disliked the video, feel free to dislike it. Please comment how you felt about any of the books in the series. If they were the similar takes as me or not similar, that's okay. We can have differing opinions. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!
So she flies through the pages to the skies. Fantasy and romance blooms in her heart and in her room.